Marvel Studios Eternals. This came out in last year in 2021, around like November or so. And then we watched it on Disney Plus when it came out in January 2022. And we're recording this. We've been a little tardy on this, but we're recording this in like March 6th, 2022. But yeah, it's a pretty good movie. Yeah. Where do we go from here? Do we go to the plot? Do we go to... yeah, okay, what is the movie exactly? Let's go into the plot.
Let's go into what we thought before we got into the movie.
Yeah, what did we know? What did we know about this movie? We knew that it was very divisive. We knew
that's what you knew.
That's what I knew. I knew that the movie was divisive. The critics did not like it as much as the fans did on Rotten Tomatoes. I knew that like it had a really diverse cast, and like people were like viewing that as like, you know, a problem or something. Or like they were not engaging with it for whatever reason. But that was one of my appeals, one of the reasons it was appealing to me. I was like, oh, this seems interesting, a little kind of different direction for a Marvel movie. Also, like, it was pretty notable in that I had no idea what the Eternals were as a concept for the most part, because like they're not like Captain America or Iron Man or any recognizable kind of characters like that. They're like some other side thing. Like I might have heard that Thanos might have been an Eternal on Titan, but that's literally all I knew.
I didn't even know that.
So I don't think Pierre PhD knew that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you heard anything else going on.
I wasn't sure if it was like X-Men or Third, Fourth World or whatever it was, and
right.
I knew Chloe Zhao, I knew Angelina Jolie and Sam Hayek, but they didn't really feature them. And I felt like the trailers for it were really bad on TV, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't really plussed by the trailers either. I think I was more interested in it on social media, probably on Instagram. I knew Kumail Nanjiani was had to get really. I follow his stuff kind of.
Right.
He's like a South Asian American actor.
Yeah.
And like he like got into really got into physical shape to do this movie, to be like a superhero for this. So apparently that was a whole big deal, and like there's a lot of criticism coming from like people like giving backhanded compliments against him and stuff for that. So like yeah, and you know I always thought of him as like a comedian or a funny guy, and like so it was really strange seeing him like, oh, he actually has to get in physical shape for this. So this is like a pretty big role for him. So but like that being said, there's like 10 people like that are Eternals in the cast alone. And that's where the majority of the conflict comes from, is these 10 characters in the cast that all have different backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah, I guess the main characters aren't really American, right?
Yeah. Right, so like...
And I have to get into the Kamaj stuff.
Well, most of them are American. Pretty much all of them are American. They're just different backgrounds. They're not white. Right. They're people of color, but...
Let's see, we can get into that a little bit.
Anyway, that being said, like, who are these Eternals, anyway? Yeah. And what's their deal? So... the Eternals are this group of...
Angelina Jolie, yeah.
Yeah, so Angelina Jolie is also an interesting casting choice, I think. But yeah, who are these Eternals? They're a group of ancient heroes sent from beyond the stars by the celestial Ereshkigal to protect Earth since the dawn of man in 5000 BC. And they're protecting Earth from these creatures called the Deviants, and they're like thought to be defeated in like the 1500s or so then the Eternals go their separate ways. And then 500 years later, after the events of Infinity War, the Deviants mysteriously return, and the Eternals are forced to reunite to defend humanity once again, and like understand more about their mission, and get into all kinds of conflict along the way.
Edited plot summary from Disney Plus on Wikipedia.
Yeah, so like that's kind of like and also like the thing I wanted to mention is that she would be working on Nomadland at the same time as like going to do production meetings for Eternals.
Really?
So she would be like filming in a van for Nomadland, and then she'd be going to like an office for like Marvel meetings and like going over visuals and stuff like that.
No Country for Old directors.
So yeah, she's very young and like had a lot of energy to like do a lot of like really big high concept stuff, and also
she's gonna have quite a retirement fund.
So yeah, she said doing this stuff was able to get her health insurance and stuff and pay off and pay off her student loans. And stuff.
Wow, she had to worry about student loans.
Yeah. I mean, that's NYU for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we've talked a lot about like the behind the scenes of this movie, but like what is actually happening in this movie,
right?
So yeah,
this is where it gets very interesting. Even though like the background of the movie is interesting enough, yeah.
Yeah, the background of the movie is interesting enough, but like, yeah, I mean, overall, like how I would describe this is that it's like, I don't know, it has some parts of an art house film, but also the scope of a Marvel movie, but also
blockbuster
and a blockbuster, space epic, obligatory Marvel action sequences, comic book stuff. It's got Jack Kirby influences in there.
It's got a really good script that it's probably I would say one of the best Marvel scripts ever. There's stuff I liked about the script, yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of, I think we both agreed that it kind of reminded us of something like Cloud Atlas a lot, actually. Which is like another kind
of... They have like some interesting editing. I rewatched it again just a couple minutes ago. Think about it. I might take something back, but like, I don't know, there's some interesting directions. It's not very accessible for like mainstream fans, I feel.
Yeah, we did have to take a couple of breaks while watching this movie.
Yeah.
While we were watching it at home.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, we need to slow down.
It was
pretty intense movie.
Some of the movies feel long and like it wasn't worth it. This is a really good movie. I just need the adrenaline to like calm myself down or whatever.
Yeah, it kind of like does a lot.
Yeah.
Like it goes from like big space epic to like comic book superheroes to like...
It's sort of like a historical fiction.
Yeah, it's also historical fiction at the same time, because like you're going from like the story of like these Eternals from backwards in time to like going through different eras of humanity and stuff over like 7,000 years of history, while also going into space, while also going into like personal romance and stories and stuff like that. And did we mention like, so we mentioned this part, like the
the part I'm most confused about is like, are we doing this in chronological order?
Yeah, I don't know. Do we want to do that?
I'm thinking about doing it that way.
Okay, let's do it that way, like in the past formats. Okay, yeah. So, the movie starts with like starting in the past in like Mesopotamia, and we work our way forwards in time.
Well, even before that, like you're on the ship, and then they get sent down to Mesopotamia.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're working our way forwards in time from like 5,000 years to like 1,500 years to like...
It was like, I'm not sure it was Sumerian or Mesopotamia, right?
And then there's like also the Gupta Empire.
I guess like Mesopotamia is like modern civilization, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And like there's the Gupta Empire, and there's also like the I don't know if the Incans or Aztecs or Mayans, I forget.
I forgot.
Like in Central America. But like...
Oh, yeah, they move around, yeah.
And then they reach the current day where they have to deal with stuff in 7 days. Somehow they have to do it in 7 days, even though they spent like thousands of years.
They've been slacking.
So it's like, oh, you could have told us like at least a decade earlier, you know, but 100 years earlier would have helped, you know. But we've been here for thousands of years. It tells us we got 7 days now. Anyway, let me see what else. But yeah, it deals with a lot of big, deep kind of philosophical concepts about like the center of humanity and like, you know, what are we here for, and like what if we didn't like what we were here for, you know, and does it even matter anymore?
It's a disaster movie also. It's
it's also kind of like has historical war movie stuff in it too.
Yeah.
And like features like depictions of colonization and stuff, and like
it's a very interesting take on like superheroes and like world dilemmas and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like, well, I can't remember at the moment, but like some of it doesn't feel like what we're experiencing now. It's escapist, but like it's still like, you know, makes you think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is kind of like dealing with like a lot of the problems that like I didn't watch Man of Steel,
right?
But like I heard like Man of Steel dealt with a lot of questions of like or like maybe I can speak to more of like something that I have watched or something is like I watched Watchmen.
Yeah.
This is also very reminiscent of Watchmen.
Both Zack Snyder, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's true.
Yeah.
Where like Watchmen deals with like, what if these characters have all these like ridiculous powers? How would they actually react to like a lot of the kind of problems that humanity's facing? And,
yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Actually, like,
and like if
you'd have to try and fix humanity's problems if you could,
right? And
or
yeah.
later on in the plot, something else,
right? Like they face these like temptations of like, oh, we could just solve all this right now if we were to just step in, but would that actually be moral or not?
I just remember you reminded me of one of the plot twists in the film.
Yeah,
and with Cersei, and there's also stuff about gods creating gods and stuff.
Right.
I don't know if that's... I'm not sure if that's a spoiler, but like...
Right.
I don't remember too well, and if you didn't watch it, I don't think you know what I would be talking about.
Right. But yeah, it is a lot about like... You know, and it also deals with like a lot of questions of like, what is it even like to live that long a period of time?
Yeah.
Knowing that you're never going to die. And like, you know... what that does to somebody and how that affects their views of humanity and like how to like
I think that might be a little bit too real.
right, but also how to reconnect with humanity if you have enough time too also is another question.
Or if you grow apart from like people you're close to.
If you feel distant from people, you know, how do you reconnect with humanity and find your own humanity if you have enough time too, which is another question at the heart of the movie as well. So anyway, we're talking about a lot of abstract things, but like, what sets all of this kind of in motion is like the natural setup of like these characters on this timeline, but also like the events of like, how they have to be together, then go apart and find their own way, and then how they reach different conclusions as individuals, and then how they come together and fight and clash with each other, having different philosophies, having taken away different things from like their experiences on their own and stuff. And you know, they don't get along, and they're kind of like this weird family that only understands each other because only they can identify with each other's issues and stuff. But ultimately, you know, they take sides and like end up deciding things based on the lessons they've learned from seeing the wonders of humanity and the positive things of humanity. It's ultimately a hopeful story, even though we're talking about all this stuff like war and devastation.
It's pretty dark.
A lot, and all these characters go on different arcs regarding this, you know.
Yeah, and some for the worst, but you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it feels like now we're naturally falling into like a rhythm of like avoiding talking about too many spoilers.
Right.
But I think we should probably mention at least a little bit of like what's.
Should we get into it now? You think it's about time?
What do you think? Spoiler talk or like?
I think we want to get into it.
Are we gonna do full spoiler talk now?
I guess so. Like, I think I'm already out of room of
non-spoiler talk.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so now we're doing full spoiler talk.
Yeah.
But Okay, so full spoiler talk. What do you think? Where do we even start?
Spoiler, like, try to avoid, like, the super spoilers till, like, later, possibly.
Yeah.
We were talking about, like, early on, like, still chronological would be good, like, like, before we started the podcast, we were talking about, like, when we get that Druid, like, before Druid, like, seemed like this, he wasn't going to be, like, he was played, like, by a non-major big star, like, Angelina Jolie, and he's sort of, like, not like your typical A-lister, but, like, they give him this role of this guy.
They make him, like, this kind of intense-faced, kind of, like, he looks like a real kind of, like, misfit, kind of, I don't know. Like, they kind of cast him as, like, this very serious person.
He's probably one of the more philosophical ones, even though he's, like, a pawn or whatever.
Yeah, but he's also...
And he also, like... His power is he sort of controls pawns also.
Yeah, his power is that he's able to manipulate people, which naturally sets itself up for like being like a really terrible... And he can do it en masse on a terrifying scale, Well,
he did it with like
he did it with a whole
like,
town of people.
Really early in the film, he's like, I can just control everyone and not let everyone destroy each other. Why won't you let me do it, or whatever it was? Yeah.
Yeah, he's just straight up controls a whole city of people.
Yeah.
And just says, "I'm gonna stop the fighting right now."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, like that's what you do with that power. But like,
And that's
does that
causes them to
justify?
split each other? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like, yeah, that's when they decide like they've gone too far and
Yeah.
like, they need to go their separate ways and stuff. They realize they've like, had enough of like doing things a certain way. Yeah, I think that like part is like a key turning point of the movie because it marks a point where like the Eternals have to reckon with like their destiny as like these people who have these powers, but also try to understand what their relationship with humanity is and how to regain their own humanity if they're able to.
I think that was Ajax's guidance.
Yeah, exactly. That was Ajax's guidance, is that you guys have to go out and do that.
Yeah.
And you guys will have to find it, and I can't tell you how to do it. You have to find it on your own.
Yeah.
And everyone does it in different ways, in some ways better than others, and it kind of leads into what leads into conflicts. But also, like, in earlier parts of the movie, they set up all the relationships between the different Eternals and their dynamics and stuff. And, like, part of, like, the key dynamic of, like, maybe the key dynamic in the movie is the relationship between Cersei and Icarus. Because Icarus is like maybe like seen as like this kind of quasi de facto leader who's like, just because he's the strongest and like the most stalwart and stoic kind of like of the Eternals, people just kind of look up to him as to like.
Also you have like Marvel with like Captain America and all that stuff.
Yeah, he kind of
Iron Man and the Iron Patriot.
Yeah, you kind of like.
We've all like.
Yeah.
Icarus is played by like a British guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he might be like Irish or something.
Yeah,
I can't really tell based on his accent. I literally don't know what it is.
I'm very bad with those
female
accents. Yeah,
it's not a bad thing. I'm just really bad with telling.
Yeah.
I also think it might be hard to tell with the audio sometimes. I just don't know what he's saying.
Also, he's like an Eternal, so they don't really reference that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're not gonna say he's from Ireland.
I'm the Irish Eternal.
Yeah, they're it's not like Power Rangers or something. We're gonna celebrate, a holiday today to highlight, it's the puzzle place, and like we're gonna celebrate Cultural Awareness Month or whatever.
The Burns.
It's not that kind of movie.
Right.
Like, it is, but like, yeah.
Well, for better or worse, it's not that kind of movie. Yeah.
Yeah, these Eternals are representing different cultures because, like, as if, like, they're like this, but like to explain that, like, I think the stance that the movie's taking is that the movie's representing the different world cultures through these different people.
2020 version, yeah.
Because, like, if they are supposed to be the originators of, like, a lot of world myths and stuff, then the Eternals themselves should represent different cultures.
I feel like, in the 90s, if they had did it, it would have been really offensive for them to do that kind of stuff now.
Right.
Yeah.
And, yeah, at the core of this movie is also the fact that the Eternals are kind of, like, these, like, characters that are kind of, like, inspired by, like, ancient alien myth theories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, like they're they're like the creators of like different technologies and stuff and throughout the course of human history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Getting into real woo-woo stuff there.
Yeah.
But it's actually really quite fascinatingly packaged into this one movie. And maybe that's as much as I want to get into that for like the time being, because like that stuff can be a rabbit hole and stuff. So,
I try to remember if it was Icarus or like Ancient Civilization who was the first person to attack and defeat a deviant in the movie.
I think the humans are trying to fight off the deviants with like spears and stuff, and then like it's the Eternals with like their magical powers that are able to fight off the deviants and stuff. And these deviants are like these like, they're like
Nemo and Slumberland demons.
Yeah, they're kind of like these kind of like.
They're way better than the ones in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, they're like these kind of amorphous like. Pulsating, vibrating, kind of like almost taking the form of animals and like different creatures and different parts of.
They're sort of like parasites at the same time,
yeah. Yeah, but I thought I was making a point at some point. What was I talking about? Cersei and
Icarus.
Icarus. Yeah, they have two diametrically opposing philosophies towards humanity.
How the powers are very different too. Yeah.
And the powers are diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Icarus is about power and like literally punching and flying and shooting laser beams out of his eyes.
Like the Superman myth, yeah.
And like he's got to uphold the goals of the Celestials that they're sent to do. And he believes
he's very loyal.
He believes in rigid hierarchy and figuring out like we gotta find solutions. We can't just sit around. And
he's thankful for the Celestials. He thought the Celestials taught him a lot of stuff.
I think he responds a lot to authority, and like I think he like demands a lot of authority.
Yeah,
he's a very authoritative kind of character. He's
an enforcer.
He's an enforcer, yeah. Whereas like Cersei's character is like kind of the heart of the movie, and like she's a very sensitive character that like appreciates a lot of like admires like a lot of like people's like even in ancient Mesopotamia she's like trying to get to know the people and like
she wears their clothes and stuff, yeah.
Wears their clothes, appreciates everyone, like appreciates the children, she's a nurturing character. Her power isn't even to destroy things but to just change it into a different form.
She doesn't really use her power that much, yeah.
Yeah. And and like it's and
I guess it helps that her power doesn't really work that well against the demons to begin with.
It's not really meant to be something that can be used to destroy things, but as we'll see during the course of the movie, she gets to learn more about the extent of how her powers can unfold and like how powerful they can be and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. You could just spend a whole video or podcast talking, just diving into each of these characters' backgrounds and like what they mean and their philosophies and stuff. Like, Kingo is a fascinating character too. Yeah. He's a fun character.
Yeah.
He's very loyal to the Eternals, but he wants to be able to enjoy life and humanity and like wants to be able to be seen and stuff like that. He doesn't want to go into hiding. That's not his way of going about things. And like he even
forgot about that,
yeah, and like he has like his partner Karun like filming him a documentary about him.
It's probably the most contemporary Eternal, yeah.
He's the one that's maybe most adapted to contemporary society, but also has had like zero ability to like stay off the grid. Because like he's just straight up like making movies and stuff.
Yeah.
But also in order to do that, he has to keep rearranging his identity and pretending he's a new person each time.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he's like the son of the son of the son and the father of the father of the father.
I've been making Bollywood. It's been been in the family for 100 years or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. It felt like it's probably a lot longer.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a really fun character.
I thought that like. He was going to be like a very serious character, and that part I thought was interesting. It was a little bit, what's the right word for it? Deviated from that.
Deviated.
It's totally not what they did with that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it was fine. Yeah. Oh, and I guess later on we have to talk about the side he chose.
The side he chose, yeah. So when it comes down to it, I don't know. We'll get to that. I guess.
Yeah.
And then Leah McHugh as Sprite. Sprite has had to deal with a lot of frustration in her life as a character because she always wants to grow up